Hello, Bartley here at MTX Automotive with another video. I thought you guys might want to see. It's a personal project. While I'm waiting on the primer to dry on the 72 Chevy, I'm going to be making a wood cook stove slash heating stove out of a old decommissioned propane tank, and this one measures roughly it's about 4.5 to 5 feet long, and it's 23 and a half inches in diameter. For just to give you a rough estimate of the size, the data plate is missing off of it, so I have no idea what the volume of it is. I mean, couldn't tell you that. I can just tell you the dimensions of it. It's going to be roughly the size of a 55-gallon barrel stove when I get through with it. It's going to be a little bit longer, but it's going to have a lot of the same. I'm going to put a barrel stove kit on it as far as the door and the flue opening and all that stuff will be from a barrel stove kit. So I've already chopped off the front end of it up here. I just followed this weld seam there, and that's where I cut it at. So that part is outside this garage door. But anyway, so I decided to chop that off first. And to get it the approximate size that I want to have it when all is said and done, I measured back 12 and a half inches from here to this line. And that's going to be my next cut. So this could be any length that you would like. I'm just telling you this to give you an idea of what I'm doing. It could be as long as this thing will allow you for it to be. I mean, you could not do anything with it, right, and just make a door on the end of it, but I need it to be shorter. So the other thing that I'm going to do with this to turn it into a quasi cook stove is I'm going to be cutting a hole in the top of it and then making welding in a flat piece of steel, probably 3/16, something like that, fairly thick, that you can cook on and heat stuff up on. I'm doing it up on this side here. You can't see it from here, but this side was the side that was facing the ground, and so it's pitted up worse, the metal is, so I want to cut that out as much of it as I can. So I'm just going to use that opportunity to make that where my hole is to put the plate in. And then I'm talking about, or thinking in my head about some way that I can make a ash pan to take the ashes out of it easier than just scooping them out with a scoop into a bucket. But I'm going to think more on that as I'm building it. That will be probably one of the last things that I do to it, if I do it at all. So yeah, so I guess I'm going to cut this video off and get to grinding this section off that I was wanting to cut off, and then I may actually grind that off or cut that off, weld the other end back on it, then bring you back in. Okay, so I have the top cut out, the top section to heat stuff up on, and so I just marked it out and cut it. I used a straight edge on the sides over here to be able to line that up, and I no kidding, I only cut that one time and it fit right in there. So I got lucky, because that's kind of hard to do, cutting that on a radius like that and then making it to where a flat piece of metal will set right down in there. But it did, and it saved me a lot of time. The next thing on the agenda will be, so this thing has handles down here. I'm going to have to cut them off. There's one on the front and the back, so I'm just going to cut them off and then relocate them up here somewhere to facilitate carrying this thing. So I'll be doing that on the back, and it's got one on the front up here too. I'm just going to locate it wherever it needs to be to be able to get a hold of this thing and move it around. And then after that, I'll probably weld this piece on, and then cut my square out for my door. I have not decided yet if I'm going to build a door out of the metal that I cut out, or if I'm going to use the door from the barrel stove kit. The easy way would be obviously to use the door from the barrel stove kit, but it's a little bit smaller than I would like, so I'm not sure yet what I'll do about that, but I will eventually make a decision on that. And then of course it'll be cutting out the hole for the stovepipe collar. I'll probably end up making one of those too. This is just a rough kind of circle that I made for that, and then fabricating the legs for the bottom, and yeah, onward and upward. Okay, so I've made more progress on the stove. Got a lot of stuff done. As a matter of fact, I'm almost have the stove completed. So I want to bring you guys in. I've got the legs welded on. I want to spend a little time on that. So what I decided to do was use angle iron and just find the radius of the tank, and then cut that out, put the legs up there, and then just weld them on. And that's what I did. The way that I found the radius of the tank was pretty primitive. I'm sure there's a million ways you can do that. I basically just took a piece of metal, and this is not the piece that I use, but basically a piece of flat metal that you can bend, and then you just bend it to the radius of the tank, and then lay that against your angle iron and transfer that with a paint stick or some kind of metal marker or something. If you're not comfortable doing that, and cutting the metal that way, afraid you'll get it wrong or whatever, you can always do that. Cut a piece of wood first, that radius, to make sure that it's going to be right before you butcher up metal. It's always an option you can use. So I just done that on all four legs. This one is a little bit shorter. You may or may not have noticed. It's just because I had a piece that was that long of angle iron and elected to use it. There's no rhyme or reason for that other than the fact that I just had a short piece that I needed to use. Under here, I don't know if I mentioned that in the last video, but I have a sliding kind of a trap door to empty out the ashes, and I just welded a kind of a track system and used a piece that I had cut out of the top because it already had the radius that I needed. I just used a piece of that metal and placed it down here over a hole that I'd cut out, and so it just slides up and down like so. And when I place my fire bricks in there, I'll just make an opening for that where the fire bricks are at. I thought it through, and I think it'll work out pretty good. It's not perfect, obviously, but The perfect way would have been to have a door sliding out the front with a tray on it, but that was going to be extremely difficult and time consuming, and it just wasn't worth my time to do it to this. I got the handles welded on the front and back so I can carry this thing. It is extremely heavy. I don't know what it weighs, but it's a lot, and it's not something you want to, drop on your toes for sure. Got the plate all welded around. Had to cut a filler piece for this. That was just as simple as getting a flat piece of metal and laying it up there, marking the backside of it, cutting it, and welding it in. Nothing to that. This is just a piece of a stud that I welded on to clamp my ground onto for my welder. That'll be cut off. This is one of the last remaining things I have to do. This standpipe is just sitting in there right now. I just got the hole cut out yesterday. I'll have to weld this. I'm going to turn this thing because I'm going to take these studs out that are in here and then put a draft control in there, a flap. So I'll just have to clock them sideways because I want that to be, perpendicular to the stove itself. And then once I get that done, I'll just seam this up, weld it up. 6-inch pipe fits right down over the top of this. I've already tried that. And I've got this seam here that I had cut to shorten the stove. I've got a little bit of area along the bottom that I haven't welded yet. I'll have to roll the stove over on its side to get to that, but that's not a big deal. I did decide to build my own door for the front, and there's probably several different ways this could be done as well, and none of them is really easy just due to the curvature of the front. A person could have built that out and made it flat along the front, and then that way you would just have to deal with making a flat door. That could be done, but that's time consuming, especially if you don't have a plasma cutter or something like that. If you had a plasma cutter, all this would be would take a whole lot less time, as you can imagine. I don't have a plasma cutter. All this was done with a simple cutoff wheel, or cutoff wheels. So what I did was I just cut a piece of the front out. Okay, I've cut some thin pieces of metal to overlap that and form the seal, and to strengthen that strengthens the edges of the door as well. So I've done that all the way around. So this is overlapping the entire hole. The most time-consuming part of this is the hinges, and that is where the curvature of the face comes into play, because the place that you mount this hinge is going to be completely different from the place that you mount this one as far as the distance away from it. And that's where you have to do a lot. You don't weld anything up solid. It's all done. You tack everything in place. Then you open your door and see where it's binding up at and relieve those areas, and then continue on. It's just kind of a back and forth game until you get it right. Because as you can tell, this is quite a bit further out than this is. This is just welded. This little piece of tubing here is that the hinge is slid down into is just welded straight to the the face of the tank, whereas the bottom is I had to build a bracket or weld a bracket to get it out away from the face of the tank. And all this was done with stuff that I had here. As far as that's just an old an old bolt that I had, both top and bottom. And the hinge or the latch, that's another thing, that there's many different ways you can build a latch. I'm not saying any way is better than the other. I just wanted something that was pretty simple and that was easy, you know. And so what I did was, and since the door, you know, is going to have the potential to see, I think it will have the potential to see some warpage due to the heat. I think it will be minimal just because of the thickness of the material that's on this tank, but there's still the possibility for some. So I wanted to be somehow a system that would allow the door to be, when it's being shut, to be pushed evenly from the top and the bottom as it's being closed. So what I come up with there was just a flat piece of metal that I bent into an arch. As you can see, it's got an arch right here. So when I lift this up and open it or close it, when I press on that to push it down into the groove, it's putting pressure on the top and the bottom as well as the center, and actually works really well. Now I will probably go ahead and weld some kind of a spring out here to dissipate the heat, so it's not as hot when I grab it to open it when the stove's in use. Out here I just welded a simple, I ground the head pretty much off of a bolt. I left some there to weld to, and then just screwed the bolt or the nut onto it and used that for my pivot. Okay, like that, and just welded a flat piece of steel out here, made me a latch here, cut a groove in it, and I made it to where you have to push it to get it to go down in there. So you're pushing it and it goes down, so that makes it fit tight, and got a pretty nice seam all the way around there. And this also, later, if for some reason this gets kind of sprung and gets weak, I can either weld another piece behind that to make that fit tighter, or I can drill and tap that and put a screw in there and adjust that in and out to make that more, put more spring into that. So it's kind of serviceable, I guess, if you want to use that word in a sense, if it ever does start to, you know, get weak or lose some of its elasticity or, you know, spring action. Opening the door, not much to see inside there. It's just a black hole. Anyway, the next thing is going to be to finish up welding up the collar and welding up around this seam here. I'm also going to cut a small hole at the bottom for a draft, and that'll have a flap on it or a way to close it. And then it's just going to be a matter, I think I'll build a fire in it while it's outside, and burn all the paint off that I can get off. Then run over it with a wire wheel, paint it, and call it good. So I'll do another quick video when I get it done and painted. That'll be the next one coming up. And here's a video of it finished up. Say hi to Nick. And on a pallet, ready to go in my house in a day or so. There it is. Let me know what you think.